Did you know that 60% of meat and 70% of milk supplied globally are produced by mixed farms? Welcome back. My name, as always, is Samuel Baraza. If you're new here, this channel is for new generation farmers and new entrants in farming who are actually willing to learn new farming practices. So you can take a second or two to subscribe and hit on that notification bell so that you can be notified whenever we release and upload a new video in our farm. You have found that land that you're desperately looking for. You have actually carried out your due diligence, you have acquired it, and you've even gone to the extent of fencing it. Now the question is, what next? In today's video, I'm going to share with you some of the factors that influenced our farm layout design, which may actually come in handy whenever you're doing your own farm design, especially for a mixed farm, because that is what we want to do. So just know that there is no one single layout design that cuts across board for all farmers. There are several factors that come into play. So where you decide to plant your crops, keep your animals, build your homestead, your orchard, and even your live fence, planting your live fence will actually depend on several factors. Before we get into those factors, let me take a seat so that we can actually go one by one. Factor number one, when you're doing your farm layout design that you need to consider is the wind and sunshine direction. Now, the direction of the wind plays a critical role when it comes to setting your farm structures. So when you're talking about your livestock structures, we all know that wind blows from north to south. So in our farm, for example, the north side is this way and the south side is the other side. So when you're sitting, for example, your livestock structures, they should be on the south side, because as wind blows from north to south, it means it will actually be blowing the offensive order towards the south. So whatever it is that you're planning to do before the livestock structures will not be affected by the order that comes from the animal section. So you need to also look at where your wind blows from, and normally it's just the normal way. Wind normally blows from north to south unless otherwise. When it comes to sunshine, the sunshine direction, you have to minimize the amount of sunlight that actually comes directly through the sidewalls of your structure. So whenever you're considering building your farm structures with regards to the sunshine, you should always make sure that the long axis of your gable roof, for example, is actually set in the east-west direction, so that it can actually reduce the amount of direct sunshine or sunlight that gets through to your structures. So evidently from our farm structure, or rather from our farm layout design, you'll actually be able to notice that we've put the livestock section on the far end, as you can see on your screen. That will be eventually our livestock section, because that is the south side. And from the north side, we've actually placed the crop section, so that if the wind blows, crops give you fresh air and all that. Our homestead is located in between the crop section and the animal section. So when the wind blows from north to south, it will actually be blowing fresh air towards the homestead, and then once it goes past the homestead, it will now be blowing off the offensive order from the animal section to the south side. Factor number two is the farming system that you want to implement in your farm. As I've told you here, we want to do mixed farming, but that is not cast on stone on any person who's willing to go into farming. So depending on the farming system that you want to adopt, your farm layout design will actually be largely dependent on that type of system. So if you're doing, for example, shifting cultivation, you'll not need as many structures as opposed to the person who's doing livestock farming or mixed farming. But in that case, you also need to consider how you're going to set your irrigation system or your drainage system in your farm as you do your, as you plant your crops. Now, for that person who's doing livestock farming, and also the people who are doing mixed farming, will also have to consider the amount of structures, because animals need a lot of structures where you have to keep them. For example, if you're doing sheep farming, goat farming, you'll need a shed for that. So you have to also consider that when you're doing your layout design. Now, evidently from the diagram you can see, which actually happens to be our farm layout design, you will notice that we've actually set aside an apiary, which will actually be complementary with regards to our planting of crops, because it's a mixed farm. So the apiary will have bees, and bees actually help in doing cross-pollination. And that is one of the advantages of doing mixed farming, because it complements what you do on the other side. So you'll find The plant section will complement the animal section, and the animal section will also return the favor by complementing the plant section. So you'll also consider also in the farm that we've specifically set aside a section where we'll be planting animal feed from the farm, and we'll also do silage and all that. And also from that other side, we have set up a farmyard manure section, collection point, where we'll be actually preparing manure that will be very helpful when it comes to crop farming. Another factor that you also need to consider when you're actually doing your farm layout design is the farm size, the size of the farm and the features within the farm. So basically right now, it's difficult to get a huge amount of land. Vast expanse land is very difficult to find now because of urbanization and all that. And also the real estate costs are high in Kenya. I don't know about where you come from, which country you're in, but in Kenya, they're too high. So you'll find sometimes you have a very small piece of land. So how you utilize that small space, whatever piece of land that you have, will actually matter when it comes to your farm layout design. So avoid wastage of space in your layout design, because the kind of land that you have in the current day and age would actually necessitate you to utilize every bit of it. But if you come from a place where you have huge or vast land, then you can decide on, trying to do your layouts the way you want. But we also consider those people who have limitations when it comes to the size of land. The fourth factor that you need to consider when you're doing your farm layout design is your expansion plan. So your design should actually cater for any future expansion plan that you might have. And this can be done by probably in your design making spaces within your design where you plan to do something in future. Or if you have structures that you want to develop at that particular time, you can have structures that have a higher carrying capacity than what you want to start with. That will actually help you, factor in your expansion plan. Now, if you look at our design, apart from just the crop farming and the animal section, we have a section called the subsistence section. Now, this section is a small section within the farm that we want to try out different things, and this is where we'll start before we now do the expansion to the crop farming side and the animal farming side. Now, this subsistence mixed farming side will actually encompass all the things that we'll be doing on the other sections. So if you have any expansion plan in future, make sure you have spaces for that, or build structures that have a higher carrying capacity that will actually help you in future not to again construct new structures. Now, the fifth factor that you need to consider when you're doing your farm layout design is the topography and type of soil within your land. Now, the topography basically is just how your farm kind of slopes and all that. So you also need to consider that, because when you'll be looking at the drainage system of your farm, and also when you want to set up your irrigation system without incurring a lot of costs in terms of pumping water and all that, you need to know that topography of your land. Now, when it comes to the type of soil, you need to consider what type of soil is actually what type of soil you have in your farm for the different types of farm structures that you want to set up. So if you want to set up a farm structure, you have to consider a place where it's actually kind of sandy and loamy, because that place will actually hold your farm structure better than a place that is actually waterlogged or flooded. Evidently, from our farm layout design that you can see on your screen, we decided to set out our livestock section on the rocky side that is on the southern side of our farm. That area is a bit rocky as compared to the northern side, which is very fertile. Now, kindly note that for you to determine the fertility of your land, you need to actually do what we call a soil test. So get an expert to do a soil test for you. But now for us, we've already done that. We've seen the northern side of our farm has actually more fertile soil as compared to the southern side, which is a bit rocky. So we decided to let that southern side. And it was so coincidental, because remember our first point when we talked about wind and sunshine direction? The south side was actually best when it came to the wind and sunshine direction for the livestock. And in this other one, when we talk about the topography and type of soil, still the southern side is a bit rocky and still suitable for a livestock section, as opposed to the northern side, which is very fertile and actually reserved for crop farming. The sixth factor that you need to consider when you're doing your farm layout design, which is visibility and accessibility. You need to consider visibility and accessibility of the different sections of your farm. Now, let's take an example of your storage point. You need to separate your storage points from other structures just to prevent pilferage. You know, you can have your farmhouse where your guys are sitting, the guy you've employed to, you know, manage your farm, where they'll actually be residing. And then you put also the storage there. Chances are high that you're going to experience pilferage and a lot of theft. So what is normally recommended is that when you're doing your storage, it should actually be separate from other structures, and it should be in a place where it is visible from where you are. If you look at our farm layout design, our homestead is located in the center of all these farms, so it's easy to actually access both sides of the farm, both the crop side and the animal side. And also from that particular section, everything within the farm is very visible. The seventh factor that we need to consider when you're doing your farm layout design is the equipment and machinery that you plan to bring into your farm. So there should be a place specifically located to accommodate all your equipment and machinery. You should have very nice roads, or rather a path that these equipment can actually be used to, you know, be transported from one section of the farm to the other, because you'll find any equipment or machinery in the farm will not actually be used only on one section of the farm. So you have to consider the equipment and machinery you're planning to bring in the farm and how they will be moved from one section of the farm to the other. If you look at our farm layout design, you'll find that we have a very wide road from the gate all the way to the end of the farm that will actually accommodate the movement of all these machinery. So when you're doing your farm layout design, kindly consider the equipment and machinery. Even before you bring it, consider what in future you're going to bring to the farm, so that you have a space for it in your design. So last but definitely not the least, we've come to the eighth factor that you need to consider when you're doing your farm layout design. You need to consider your security, the security around your area. Now, there's one thing that we always know: when you go to a new place, you don't choose who your neighbors are. So you need to plan whether you have good or bad neighbors. You need to plan for that in your farm design layout. So the type of even fencing that you put matters a lot. So we always say that the best type of fencing that will actually help your security, will enhance your security, can be K-apples if you're talking about live fence. Of course, if you can afford it, you can do wall fencing if you want. For those people who are looking at cheaper costs, you can actually plant your own live fence with K-apples. They enhance security, and also the type of animals you keep can also enhance your security. You can have guard dogs. You can also have provision for, you know, donkeys, pigs at the different section of your farm, geese, turkeys, and all these. They actually ensure security of your farm. So in a nutshell, those are some of the factors that we considered when we're doing our farm layout design. We hope as you start your farm layout design process, they'll come in handy. And for those people who've been watching us, we really want to appreciate you. Thanks for staying tuned and learning with us every day of the week. Whenever we post our videos, we learn something new. Keep watching. For those people who've not yet subscribed, take a second or two to subscribe right now. And today I want to do a special shout out to Pamela Tiongik. You gave us very good feedback when it came to fencing. You advised us to do K-apples purely, and we'll consider that. So anybody who has feedback that will help us, you know, improve one or two things about what we tell you, because we are not right, we are not entirely right. We just learn every day. So your feedback will be highly appreciated. So comment on the section what you think we're doing right and what you think we're not doing right, and we'll be able to consider you. And until next time, changamuka na ukulima.